Good evening.
Welcome once again to Branco Broadcast. I am Bob Branco, and with us this evening is Lynn Gagnon. She's going to talk to us about a couple of things, a work-from-home experience, and she's also taught some French, and she's done a few other things, and I'm sure that you'll all be very inspired by all the things that she has to say. So without further ado, here is Lynn Gagnon.
Good evening. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Bob once again for allowing me to be here and speak with everyone about jobs and working at home and what I do. And it's been a very interesting few years. So as I give away my age with all that's been going on, I'll give a brief account of the work that I have done, the employment that I've had. And the first job I had was actually not at home, but it was when I was at Perkins, and I worked as a transcriptionist on WGBH TV. And that entailed, it was a conference that I was transcribing, and the conference was very interesting. It was about dads and children and how dads interact with their children, and is it okay? You know, one of the big subjects they brought up was time for dad to be in the bathtub with little munchkins, you know. And so it was a very interesting conference about dads and children, and it was led by the well-renowned Dr. Barry Brazelton, who was a renowned pediatrician, and that was my first job at WGBH. And when I got finished doing that conference, there was another job I had, which I worked from Ted Miller's office, actually, that they sent the tapes, and I did, and it was a program called Making Things Work, and that was a very interesting transcribing job also. They liked my work, so I just kept working at WGBH, for WGBH, my postgrad, my senior year at Perkins. I had a postgraduate year at Perkins, then I went home, attended Hudson College, and after Hudson College, I went briefly up north where I live and moved to Bangor to get a job. I moved in October, got a job working at Taylor Osteopathic Hospital. That was a transcribing job, medical transcription. And I actually got that job through a really good friend of mine. I started working with the state counselor, but it never panned out. I never saw much. And, it was just one of these experiences where he never contacted me, and I finally wound up getting the job at Taylor Hospital through a friend of mine rather than through any organization. Although I did briefly go to Oak Street, 45 Oak Street in Bangor, which is an employment organization where they have job listings, and I worked for the gentleman who works with handicap, and I tried to get a job through him, and there was not too much available, either part-time. So I wound up at Taylor Hospital. This was from 1978 through 1982. By then I got married. I was pregnant with Jean, so I decided to become a stay-at-home mom at that point. Fast forward 2 years later, I attended Beale College for a up-to-date course, and this is where I learned how to use a computer back in 2003 when I went to Beale College. Graduated from there. 2005, I wound up working. This is when I started working at home. Actually, at Beale College, I was offered a job from a Dr. Vion, which I was transcribing. He was a minister, so I transcribed his sermons. He offered me the job, and he walked up to me. I was ready to start class, and he walked up to me and started questioning me about my computer. And I told him, it has JAWS. I told him about JAWS. And he asked me, how would you like to work for me? I said, I'd love to. So I started transcribing Dr. Vion's sermons. Now, this one was actually at-home work. And one of the big advantages of working at home is you do it on your own time space. You wake up, you want to work in the morning, you can. You want to do it in the afternoon, you can. You want to work in your bathrobe, good. You don't have to buy you don't have to buy clothes, new wardrobe, anything like that. You don't have to go out and anywhere, transportation. So you save on clothing and you save on transportation big time, actually, if you're working from the home. The big thing about working from home, I found, is that you really have to discipline yourself to work, because there sometimes can be a lot of distractions from the home. You've got phone calls. Oh, there's the radio, there's TV, there's all kinds of things you could be doing at home. So the big thing for me was knowing, I have to work. I have to go to work, but it's at home. So it's the disciplinary part of getting the work done. If you have a week to do the work, that's a week, that's your deadline. And when I worked for Dr. Vion, I usually had a week's deadline to get all the work done. So it was really nice transcribing his sermons. They were very inspiring. It was not medical, but I felt I was gaining experience from that work. And I really enjoyed working for him. I worked for him. He was writing a book, and so after his book got published, that was my job, and that was the end of that job, although I would have worked more for Dr. Vion, but he passed away, so that was it. After I graduated from Beale also, I worked for the Bangor Museum of History. I got a job offer, again, from a friend of mine that went to Beale College. These were not offers from any organization. It's so funny how that worked out that way. But a friend of mine called me and said, how would I like to work for the Bangor Museum of History? This job was interesting because they did interviews with people that were prevalent citizens of the Bangor community. Like one of the interviews I did was a interview with a Bill Miller, who worked at Bill's Pharmacy, or Miller Pharmacy, here on State Street. So all these interviews with different people, they were interviews that I had to transcribe. The thing is, interviews are really tricky sometimes to transcribe because you get somebody's voice fading, or you don't catch everything they're saying, or the quality of the tape is not there. So it's tricky in the sense that sometimes you have to leave a space if you don't catch what was said, and maybe somebody else might look at it and see if they can catch it. Conferences and interviews probably are the most tricky things to transcribe, and I've done both. So this job lasted. They had quite a number of CDs that I had to do for the museum. So when that job ended, it ended because they had so many tapes to transcribe, and that was it. Then along came my job at Landmark Transcription. This was it was sort of medical in the sense. It didn't have a lot of medical terminology, but it was interviews. Again, it was interviews with different people in the medical profession on medications and working as a pharmacist and all kinds of interviews that pertain to the medical field. And I did those for a while. This was back, I want to say 2008, 2009 maybe. And all of a sudden, Landmark Transcription was saying that they weren't going to do interviews, or people didn't want to be interviewed, or we're not doing interviews. So the job kind of fizzled out that way, but I wound up diagnosed with cancer and then chemo and neuropathy. So that pretty much ended the neuropathy kind of ended my career as far as any kind of transcription that I did. But another job that I had transcribing, it was a really interesting transcription job, was I transcribed for a friend of mine. This also was from the home. I worked for a little while for a gentleman by the name of Dick Curlis. I think some of you might be familiar with him. He's a country music entertainer who I did some transcribing for from the home. That was an interesting job too. Again, it was business-related transcribing. So I did that from the home. The thing about that I found, the only job I really got through any organization for the blind, or any kind of organization, whether it be for the blind or any organization, career organization, was actually the job I got for landmark transcription. All the other jobs just kind of came as opportunities. The thing, it's very hard to get a job sometimes. Even with the ADA, they're supposed to follow the ADA rules. I even wrote a resume and sent it to a transcription company, and I got a reply saying I didn't have enough experience. If you can imagine that, and I had done all this work at home and all these other transcribing jobs at Taylor Hospital and all that. And it can be very tricky to get a job. The thing that I realized was that even though I went for medical transcription, I realized that I was better off taking any transcription job that I could find. I mean, even though I studied for medical, I was at the point where I was willing to take any transcription job whatsoever. But then in 2007, I had the opportunity to teach French at one of my other home endeavors. My friend Leslie Snow said that she wanted to learn French, her and her family. And I said, well, I'd love to teach it, but there's one tricky thing. I had not learned how to write in French because when I went to Perkins, I was 5. I didn't know English at all. But we switched course now. Perkins is English, so I never got the opportunity to learn how to write in French. Well, my brother did get that opportunity because he went to public school in Frenchville and learned how to write in French. So I did not get that opportunity to write. So I told Leslie, well, I'd love to teach it, but it might be all conversation because I've never written. Outside of knowing how to write some of my aunts and uncles' names in French, which my mom told me how to spell, that was the extent of my writing in French. And then I discovered, wait a minute, how am I going to teach this French? I decided, I'm going to go online and look some things up and see if I can learn how to write. So I went online and learned there was some information on how to write foods and countries and different. So I took it each thing at a time and started to learn how to write in French by way of the computer. So I actually taught myself how to write French. And the fascinating thing with me teaching it is that not only are my 2 students learning it, but I'm learning it because I'm learning more and more how to write it. And it's very fascinating because I teach not just the language, but I also teach, I'm a big one on teaching, I teach culture as well. We're learning the French Canadian because that's what I grew up speaking. And the number one thing I teach them is, first of all, your expectations, keep them, don't be too much with your expectations. Keep them realistic because you're not going to be talking to a diplomat in 2 weeks. Not going to happen. My second thing was we always learned at Perkins. It was so funny. There was always this sort of competition between speaking French Canadian or Parisian, and there were some that felt, French Parisian is more correct or is more this or that, more correct, more proper, and more. But now they're kind of getting away from all that. The way I teach is that I tell my students that both are correct. It's just that anytime you will go to a different country, you are going to get different dialect, just like if you were to go to Mexico and then you were to go to Peru or Argentina, it's going to be different. just like if you went to Germany and then went to Austria. So I stress the fact that either is correct, and I'm teaching the French Canadian because that's what I know. But I tell them that either is correct. In fact, when I went to chemotherapy, my doctor was from France, but we spoke French together. Now, the thing was, I understood her, and we understood each other very well. Had no problem understanding each other. So with that, I mean, if there's any questions, feel free to ask me, and we'll go with questions.
Okay, what we're going to do is we'll take questions. We're going to have each person ask one question, at least to start, because we have a lot of people on the line. So the first person I'm going to call upon is Mary Donahue.
Yes, Lynn, I've got a question regarding your tutoring. I think that's very interesting. I've done the same with the Spanish language too. But when you tutor, do you use any visual aids, any handouts or anything like that, or is it all oral conversation?
I use all kinds of handouts. I actually write up the chapters. I do the chapter. It's like creating a textbook, actually. I start with writing the chapter, which has to do with, the first part of it has to do with culture. And then I'll do a grammar section, like we'll take two verbs, and we'll conjugate the two verbs. And everything I write. So I write everything. I type everything. And they get everything in writing. Yes. So I do a lot of writing and print it out and give it to my students, and we go through the lessons that way.
Super. That's what I did too.
Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, Janice Crosby.
Okay, I've been trying to find work at home for the last 7 or 8 years, I guess, and because of transportation issues as far as getting back and forth to work, and so I have done transcribing at one point in my life, transcribing for an attorney, and I'm trying to find out how can I go about searching for some sort of work at home, maybe doing something like that, like transcribing.
What I did, one of the things I did was did a search on the computer, simply put in transcription work at home, and you might be able to find some website that will offer that. Is it a specific transcribing that you're looking for, like at medical or anything, or?
No, I have no experience in the medical terminology.
Right.
So
yeah, you have to be really good with terminology if you're going to do medical. Terminology is all of its own. It's like being on another planet, you know. Yeah, so if you just do a search on transcription work at home, do a search on that, and see what you can come up with on the website, because I did that, although it's funny because my last job with Landmark Transcription, I actually worked through the employment office on Oak Street there, and there was a gentleman that worked with not just visually impaired, but with special needs type people that were looking for work too. And I worked with him, and he was the one that kind of got me that job at Landmark Transcription. We went through my resume. He looked at my resume. We updated my resume, and he suggested he did a cover letter also, and faxed that into Landmark Transcription, and then I got accepted. I got the job that way, and that was really the only job at home or any job that I got through any kind of organization. Everything else just sort of fell in my lap.
Oh, okay.
Well, Yeah, it's so tricky trying to get a job. See,
It is.
And the weird thing, when I went to Beale College, we guarantee that we'll get you a job.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you guarantee. Well, wow, everything I went through just to get jobs. Yeah, and even my state counselor felt they should have done more, which they didn't. He always felt that they didn't. I mean, while they accommodated for me, he felt that they really should have done a lot more. He wasn't really too impressed with the situation after I graduated.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's very tricky.
Okay, next we have Joe Smith.
Hello.
Is Joe Smith there?
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah.
Joe
How are
Smith?
you, Joe?
I'm here. I'm here.
Go next.
No, you can let somebody else ask Glenn a question.
Peter Donahue.
Right. Marcy Siegelman.
Marcy.
Marcy Siegelman. All right, moving right along. Peter Donahue.
Yes, I have two questions and a comment. The first one for you, Lynn, is I know that you're teaching French, but did you investigate the possibility of using voice recognition software so that way you could continue transcription, and that would help you overcome your situation with your neuropathy and stuff. Did you investigate that possibility?
I will be honest with you. No, I have not investigated that possibility. No, I haven't.
Okay, that's certainly something to consider. Also, have you also, and since I'm a web developer and I know how to put this stuff together, have you ever considered possibly expanding and being able to instruct students in other parts of the country and even other parts of the state of Maine? Yeah, this can all.
Okay. So your question, have I thought about doing it, teaching in other parts of the state or anything like that?
Video
I thought about it. I have thought about it. Right now, I've thought about it. Yeah. In fact, my son said, "Gee, Mom, you should actually teach French in the greater Bangor area." And I said to him, "Well, actually, I don't have a certificate. I'm doing it because I enjoy doing it, but I actually don't have a certificate. And the way things are today, it seems to me that you need a certificate for everything."
Depends on who you want to work for. Yeah. Just something that I was going to say, and Bob and I had some correspondence about this. We've been hashing around some ideas for a blindness-related website, and getting back to the matter of home-based businesses. And I'm sure that you've had to look at this also, and it is a big concern, and that there are legitimate work-from-home opportunities, and unfortunately, there are scams. I know of other blind people around the country who have looked into these types of opportunities, and one of two things happens. Either and part of this, I think, is the blind person's fault for not being persistent, is they'll, check out one of these opportunities, and then they'll discover that their software may not work with the company's interface, and then, then they ask the people with the company who know nothing about assistive technology whether it'll work or not, and they tell them it can't, and these folks get discouraged instead of asking the right questions, being persistent, or they find out that the opportunity is a scam. And one thing that we need to do is, if you're looking at one of these things, is check it out with reliable authorities, the Better Business Bureau, the Federal Trade Commission, and make sure that they're the real deal. And the other thing is, if you do find that they're legit, and they're giving you a line about assistive technology, you can just say, look, I know how to use this stuff. And sometimes some of these companies or even websites will have demo areas that you can go to their website. You can actually take your assistive technology for a test drive, and you know your technology. They don't. So so a little persistence there pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Perseverance. I was going to say, like, perseverance is a huge thing. I went for an interview one time. This was before I got the Taylor Hospital job, and I was working through the unemployment office there on Oak Street, and I went in to a job interview, and the first thing they asked me, what do you want? And I thought, wow, do I really want to be? I mean, it was awful right from the get-go. I went, well, I told them I was here for a job interview, and they said, well, you know, this is temporary. I didn't know it was temporary. I said, no,
Now I do.
So they sat me down at a typewriter, and the typewriter was not working well. There was something going on with the typewriter, and the whole thing was just awful. I left that place thinking this is not going to, I felt like, and I spoke with the gentleman at the unemployment office there on Oak Street. He asked me how it went, and I was really discouraged that particular day. I said, wow. I told him right from the get-go the whole thing, and he said to me, you made a really good point. With regard to the comment about what do you want, he asked me, would you really want to work for people like that? So,
Really?
I said, well, I said, that's a really good point. Yeah. So I really kept that in mind. I thought that was an excellent point, but it helped me clear my head. It really helped me to understand, a little bit. And it was such a great point that it inspired me. Instead of getting frustrated or giving up, I said, okay, that's a great point. So I just forged on and kept going.
Okay. Joni Leonard.
Hi, Lynn. I just want to tell people that with these work-from-home schemes or scams, sometimes they might ask you for money, and you send them money, and they send you a little information. And if you want more information, you have to send them more money. Don't send money. Most likely, it's a scam.
Oh yeah,
I would agree. The other thing, if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. I mean, I've never had any scam problems, but there are scams today. And one of the big things about scams, if it sounds too good to be true, you better leave it alone.
Well, I worked from home for 25 years. I still am, and I love it. There's nothing like it. So
no, there isn't. I really liked it. Yeah. What I enjoyed about it, I could sit there and drink all the coffee I wanted. I could take a break anytime I wanted, and yet still get the work done. It is the most relaxing place in the world that you can work, because one of the things about working at home, you don't have to listen to your coworkers gossiping about this guy and that guy, and it's great. I love it. I liked working at home.
Okay, Karen Crowder.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, Linda. I just want to comment and ask, what is the most interesting job you've had working from home? And I also want to say I've done some working at home when I wrote for the Ziegler, and I write for, Consumer Vision. But when I wrote for the Ziegler, I agree that, you have to discipline yourself to work at a certain time and get the work out, and but it is very relaxing to work at home.
Yeah, it is. The most interesting, wow, that's a great question, because in their own way, there was so much interest in all the jobs that I did at home. Like the museum job was great because they were interviewing so many different people from the Bangor community that did anything for the city. There was one gentleman that they interviewed that worked at the Bangor Daily, And he talked a lot about he talked a lot about historical events that happened in Bangor, like the big fire of I want to say 1911. There's a huge fire here in Bangor that hit downtown. I mean, virtually every building was just demolished.
Oh.
And from a historical thing, that was a very interesting interview. And Dr. Vion, I thought, was very, very interesting to do because being a minister, he kind of, he was serious about his work, but he also had a little tinge of every once in a while something humor. But sometimes he would share something that was very, very touching. One instance where he was talking about a young teenager who was asked, "So how was your vacation?" He said, "Lousy." And Dr. Vion said, "Wait, as soon as I greet the people, I'll talk to you, okay?" So the young man waited, and Dr. Vion asked him, "So what happened with your vacation?" And he said, the young teenager said, "Yeah, my dad said, I'll love you if you cut your hair." And the comment that Dr. Vion said about that was, that is judgmental, but it really hit me because when you realize what goes on in this world sometimes, but it was very touching. He did a lot of touching type things in his work. So they were all the jobs I had were interesting in their own way, It's hard to pick out which one was the most interesting because there were so many great ones.
Yeah.
Okay, Cleora Boyd. Cleora?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're next.
Took me a while to unmute there. Well, actually, I think the questions I might have had have been asked and answered already. So I think it's a great, interesting job to hear that you were able to work at home. I'm wondering, though, with transcription, is that something that still exists? I understand now that doctors just kind of talk it into the computer. They don't use transcription anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, I heard this too. I heard that it was kind of fading away. There are other methods that people are using now. It's becoming a lost. I hate to say it, but I did hear about that, and it seems to be becoming a lost art, which is kind of too bad. It's like saying, okay, you're not going to need your bank tellers anymore because it's, you just go to the ATM machine for everything that you want now, for everything you need to do. You know what I mean? Society is really changing in that way. That some change is good, but some are, I don't know.
Well, technology is eliminating a lot of jobs.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the problems. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't go to the bank anymore. When I get a check, I can deposit it with my iPhone.
Exactly. It's like when I pay my bills, I just go online. I don't go out anywhere. I just do it online.
Absolutely. The only checks I write anymore are to my yard man, and I'm working on getting rid of that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jay Mortazavi.
Thank you, Bob. Linda, you sound like had a very fascinating life. I was curious to know, when you were a kid, were you grow up as a speaking French?
Yes, I did. That was my first. French is actually my first language. I grew up primarily. They spoke French at my house, and when I went to Perkins, I didn't know English at all. So French is actually my first language. Yeah.
That's very nice. Now, when you were start transcribing, I guess in those days there was no computer, just a regular typewriter. You must be a very good typist. How did you correct yourself? That, for instance, if you made a mistake, and how did you know?
Yeah, with the older typewriters, when I started out, they had the electric typewriters, the old Remingtons and the Underwoods and the Royal typewriters, and they had correct. Now, a lot of times what was tricky about typing was that you didn't always know, I'll relate this. This is funny. At Taylor Hospital, of course, they corrected our work. And sometimes it would happen to me. I'd be typing something and I'd go, did I write this or not? Did I write this letter? Did I space or did I not space? And sometimes if I was sure, I would ask someone, what was the last thing I wrote? So sometimes you had to ask somebody that question if you couldn't remember what the last thing you wrote. That doesn't happen now with computers. So I thought for sure I was doing an operative report. And the operative report said the patient was tucked and draped in the usual fashion. So I'm writing D, and I'm thinking, did I put the D down? Yeah, I think I did. But you know what? I did not put the D down, so I put the patient was tucked and draped in the usual fashion. So that was one of the really funny ones. And the next day, one of my workmates said, I don't think anybody'd want to come here if they read one of your reports. I said, why? What'd I do? And they told me what happened. So this kind of sparked a let's keep our bloopers. We went through this thing where we kept all of our bloopers. My workmates and I kept track of the bloopers that we did, and that they decided that was one of the best bloopers in for that entire year. But it was pretty funny. Of course, they corrected it, but we got a lot of laughs out of it. Yeah. So that kind of thing would happen a lot back when I first did transcription. Yeah, not so much now.
How many children do you have?
What was that?
How many children do you have?
2.
Oh, 2. Okay, thank you.
Steve Theberge.
Yeah, hi, Lynn. First of all, I don't think you have to worry about the dictation putting you out of business because it's definitely not a perfect system, even though it's very good. And as far as the French-Canadian, we had similar. When I was a child, my mother spoke a lot of French. I did know English, and my father would say, "Oh, we bring you to Perkins and you switch to the English station, and we pick you up and you speak French." And my point was that over the years, my mother learned English, and I kind of lost. I can understand French better than I can speak it. And my question to you was, would you do conversational French over the phone, and what would your rate be for that? Because I'd like to really practice my French with somebody.
It's funny you asked what my rate would be. I teach it now and I don't charge anything. I just enjoy doing it. Although my friend, what she does at the end of the year, she'll tell me to write a list of things that I might need. I can't think of anything specific, but like a list of like kitchen items or something I might like to have. 4 items, and she'll go out and buy them, and that's how she pays me. I enjoy doing it, and I guess if I was really strapped for money big time, I would probably charge.
Now,
and I hadn't thought about.
Do you do that by phone with people, or do they come to your house? How do you do that exactly?
No, I see. No, I go to their house, or they come to my house.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes we go to the library. Sometimes we go to Tim Hortons and do it. Yeah.
That's a nice Canadian company.
So we do it. It's great. I enjoy doing it. So.
Great. Okay.
All righty. Don Bowden.
Yes, thanks, Bob. Linda, I can relate to everything you said about transcription. Me who was a transcriber for many years. My first question is, when you transcribed from sermons, I would assume you did that from tape.
Yeah, he had a cassette recorder. My Dr. Leon had a.
That's right.
Yeah. And I had a transcribing machine that took cassette tape recorders, so I used it when I did his transcription.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and let me tell you, just a comment. You talk about a challenge, okay? But when I worked at Worcester City Hospital, I was transcribing from both English and foreign doctors. Boy, that was
I'm so glad you brought that. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. We had when I was at Beale College for my update course, we did these practice tapes, and we did all kinds of situations where the doctor might be in a place where there's all kinds of people talking at the same time. And I did one practice tape that was this doctor who, he was from another country, and he spoke with a relatively very thick accent, but he spoke like this.
Oh, yeah, it's difficult, you know.
And you could hear all this background noise, people talking, phones ringing, munchkins crying, everything in the background. So it was, the tricky thing was blocking everything else out and trying to catch what he was saying. And that was a real challenging one that I did. And but I liked it because it was challenging. Now, had he not been in such a noisy room, I probably would have, not, because foreign, I don't really have any real problem understanding any of what they're saying. I'm so used to it because at Perkins, we had foreign teacher trainees that were from foreign countries, and you heard, most any kind of, that you could imagine. But the fact that the room was so noisy and this doctor talking like this, that was real challenging. Yes, that's very challenging.
With the way it worked in my office was, even with the sighted people there and my supervisor, when we would get stuck on a word, we would ask each other to help each other out, and they would also look into the chart to see if they could find what we were stuck on.
Yeah, we did that too. Yeah, when I worked at Taylor Hospital. Mm-hmm.
And my hospital was a teaching hospital, so we had a lot of foreigners there.
Yes.
It was very challenging.
And what was really funny, what would get really funny, one person would hear a doctor say something and like the next person would hear something, and to them it would sound like something really different. So, it's like, what do you think it sounds like? What do you think this sounds like? Sometimes. And then you get the doctors that are real predictable. Like I worked for a Dr. Kaplan, like you knew exactly what he was going to say. You got so used to transcribing for him that I went through his reports like click, 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 get this report, click, 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 get another one, And it was like because I got so used to transcribing for him that I knew exactly what I was a little bit ahead. I knew exactly what he was going to say because he was so consistent with how he transcribed. That happened too.
Just very quickly, a funny thing, we found that some of the English doctors, in some cases, were more difficult than the foreigners, because they talked fast and they mumbled and all that.
Oh, yeah, you get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got one. One of my coworkers got one of his doctors transcribing, and he's trying to get through, and he's mumbling and he's yawning, and he's like, Finally, the person said, "Boy, he was tired when he did this report." Geez, you get all kinds, you really do.
Oh, yeah, it was a challenging time in my life.
Okay, all right, we're going to move on to anything else, Don?
No, I'm all set, buddy. Yeah.
Okay, Glenn Grimes.
Hi. Am I on?
You are on. I hear you.
Oh, no. Just make sure I was unmuted. I only had one question. When you said WGBH, did you mean Channel 2 or the FM side? TV was Channel 2.
The educational channel there.
WGBH
TV, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's Soldier Field Road or what? Yeah, that's wow. Was that when? Did you do that in your senior year, 270?
That was in my senior year, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I are in the same class. I just didn't know. I knew you did it in your PG. I didn't know about the senior year. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do? Try to pick you up and bring you back to Perkins? Yeah.
That was a good job. I liked that job. It was good. It was challenging because it was a conference. And, a lot of times with conference, you have 5 or 6 different people in the conference and some who are farther away from the microphone. You can barely hear what they're saying and pick up what they're saying. I mean, I was actually told when I did that work, and they even listened to the tape, and they told me that I picked up some things in there that they never would have been able to pick out. Like this.
Yeah, but I mean, did they drive you from Perkins back and forth? I didn't even know.
No, I didn't. I took the bus from Watertown Square.
Oh wow.
I took the bus and went. They didn't drive me.
No, but what?
My mobility instructor taught me how to get there.
Oh yeah.
I know, but was this in the morning or?
It was in the morning. We went from like 9 to 12 or something like that.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
I was having a little hard time hearing you, Glenn, because you're a little faint. So I'm sorry to make you repeat.
Sometimes this phone is. I hear you loud and clear, but I don't know. Might have to.
Okay, Lauren Casey. Lauren Casey.
I'm here. I just had to get unmuted. Linda, I don't have any questions, so I don't want to hold it up. But I just was interested in listening to everything you had to say about all your different careers. So I'm going to go back on mute so that other people can ask your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to Marcy Siegelman.
Hi, Lynn.
Yeah.
It sounds like you never were unemployed. Sounds like you had a straight career.
No, there were stretches where I was unemployed. There were stretches where, especially when I graduated from Beale, I felt like, oh my gosh, is anything ever going to come up? But it's funny. But when I graduated from Beale, though, I was actually working for Dr. Vion because I got the job for Dr. Vion during my last year at Beale. So and that was interesting about that was like doing my college work and working for him at the same time. That was at the tail end. So, there were stretches that I wasn't employed, but when it came, it was steady. The thing about landmark transcription, though, that drove me crazy was that it was either feast or famine. Some weeks there was absolutely nothing. And some weeks, like one time she called me or sent me an email. I think it was she called me at 10 o'clock at night. Could you work? Yeah. Believe me, I had the coffee pot on that night. I worked all through the night. That was the job in which I worked really strange hours. Sometimes I do an all-nighter. Sometimes I work during the day. Sometimes in the morning. And the thing about that job is I had to have the reports done exactly in such and such an amount of time. There were deadlines on that one. So sometimes I slept during the day and worked at night. Yeah, sometimes I slept during the day and worked at night, or sometimes you never knew when. So it was really a back and forth kind of. It was challenging that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other check-ins that I know nothing about that I haven't called upon? If not, I have a question of my own, Lynn. As far as work from home, I think most of us would love to do that, and most of us would like to get the most honest and sincere work from home jobs that we can get. What would be your recommendation of the best method for the average blind person who wants to work at home to judge whether or not it's going to be, they don't know it's going to be a scam, but the best judge of that? How do we detect whether it's really a scam or not before we get into the job itself?
Really do research. Really check it out. If the job offer is there, you really want to do some homework as to whether it is a scam. Check with the Better Business Bureau and check to make sure. I'm a big advocate of if it sounds too good to be true. Anytime they ask for money, I would try that. But the thing with my jobs, I knew they weren't scams because they were offered to me by either a friend or, through the unemployment office there on Oak Street. So I knew because of where they came from The other big thing is I would recommend know where your job offer comes from. If it comes from an unemployment office, like, you should be okay. If it comes from a friend, it should be okay. I mean, friends, I've not had any problems that way. But if it's a phone call or an email, then you might want to really check it out to make sure it's not a scam. The most reliable source for me was the unemployment office here in Bangor, or when a friend approached me about like the museum job or Dr. Vion or something like that. So it's who you're approached by is the big thing. Who approaches you? But definitely, if it's an email or a phone call, you might want to check it out before you even say yes.
All
right. Does that answer it, Bob?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Lynn. Anybody else before we conclude? Lynn, it's been a pleasure. We really enjoyed your autobiography there of what you've done, and it's been an inspiration. I think that a lot of us would want to follow in your footsteps and give it a whirl. I would suggest it. Just be careful, like Lynn says. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And your best sources are your friends, referrals from the employment office, and places like that. Lynn, thanks a lot for being with us.
You're welcome.
You have a great evening.
Thanks, Lynn.
You too.
Thanks,
Lynn. You're welcome.